Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here to remember Duane. So, I want to introduce myself because I know I haven't met everybody here. I'm Reverend Carol Bedeau. I'm privileged to serve here at Westside as minister. And I'm really happy to see you all here today, despite the sad circumstances, because we're going to miss Duane. But I think it's wonderful that we get a chance to remember him and share stories about him. We're going to begin by lighting our chalice. I'm going to ask Linda to come on up and light our chalice for us. This chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, and that was, there's a, over there. Yep, do that one. We're only going to do the big chalice today. We're going to do the big one today. So Unitarian Universalism was really important to Duane. This community was a community that loved him, and he loved this community. So the chalice lighting is a way to signify that the heart of Unitarian Universalism still embraces him and the spirit he shared with us. These words are adapted from Mira Mikowitz. We light the chalice, which transforms wax into pure light and warmth. We light it to remind us of our own living, how we transform the stuff of this world into the love and activity of our lives. As we remember Duane, may today bring forth transformation, transforming grief to healing, bringing from memory a kind of wholeness, and from this celebration of his life, a rekindling of the love that abides here and cannot die. So, okay, we're going to do something. Linda tells me that Duane liked this song. So, you all are going to have to sing, okay? We are going to sing a song that Duane liked, and I'm going to play it for us. We are going to sing the first 3 verses of it. You'll be able to see them all up there, and I want you to do this. Think about how Duane smiled all the time, right? So even if you don't know the words, even if you don't know the melody, do it with a smile and do the very best you can, because that was the way he was. So today will be a joyful day. Wasn't that Duane? Pretty much it didn't matter what he was confronted with. He was like, I'm going to find the cheerful thing in this. I'm going to find the positive. So Duane was someone who tried to be a bright light even in the darkest of moments. We all know that his life is actually legendary in the history of Unitarian Universalism because he lost his wife Linda in one of our tradition's darkest moments. And yet, Duane never let that make him bitter. He never let that make him bitter. He always had a smile and a cheerful perspective, which, given the losses he experienced, well, that was pretty much a big thing to accomplish. As we reflect on the legacy of his life and the love and the joy he brought into the world, I hope that today can be a way to cultivate some of the sweetness, the kindness, and the optimism that he exemplified every day. So, Duane was the person who, out of the congregation, always wanted me to send him a written copy of my sermon every week. he would say, could you email me that, so he could read it through carefully and not miss anything. And he was cheerful when he had to remind me of that repeatedly, which he did. He regularly had to remind me. He was curious. He was a deep thinker, and yet I never once heard him be critical in an angry way. He would say reflective things, but he never said things in a judgmental, critical way. You know, in the last couple of years, we started doing a new practice here at Westside called spiritual practices on Sunday mornings. And this was different than our usual. It is different than our usual Sunday morning church. In spiritual practices, we try out all kinds of crazy things. We try out Tai Chi and yoga and all different kinds of meditations. We go on meditative walks. And Duane attended every week that he could. Unless he was sick, he was here. And he was willing to try everything cheerfully. He was, even as his physical abilities declined, he tried every single yoga pose we tried to do. And he always was ready and curious to learn something. Now, during those spiritual practices, it was a great opportunity for Duane to share stories about his life. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Duane's family, his sisters, Verna and Emily, and his brother Russ, who are hopefully watching us virtually on YouTube right now or watching the recording of this. He talked about you all a lot when he told stories about your childhood. So during spiritual practices, sometimes we'd do craft projects. Like periodically we'd color. And you know, imagine a group of fairly intellectual Unitarian Universalists back in the back room being told at 9:30 on a Sunday morning that they had to color. He loved it. And he used that opportunity to tell us stories about his childhood. He talked about growing up on a farm. He told stories about, for example, having to hold the animals that were turning the mill to grind the grains. He talked about very simple, day-to-day, real lived experiences that he found a lot of joy in. You could see in the way he told the stories that those experiences shaped him as a strong and joyful person who was a little bit of a free spirit. He would sometimes tell those stories with a little bit of a mischievous glint in his eye, because he had that, right? And my absolute favorite Duane story, and some of you might have been there when he told this, was he told us about Christmases when he was a child. And he told us about how they would put up the Christmas tree in the farmhouse. And then his father, who even until he was 92, 93 years old, Duane referred to him as Daddy when he told these stories. Daddy, he said, would carefully clip the candles on the tree and light them, making sure that they were balanced perfectly so that they were safe, but so that they could have that magical, beautiful experience of the candles. And when Duane told that story, he had that twinkle in his eye. I mean, if you knew Duane, you know that twinkle, right? All you have to do is picture him and you can see that twinkle in his eye. Telling those stories lit Duane up. He liked to share those stories. And I'm glad I got to hear those stories, and I know others are as well. So I'm going to really miss him. I'm going to miss his smile. I'm going to miss those hugs. Duane was always ready to hug you on Sunday morning. And so this is our chance to share some reflections and memories and hold him close all together again. And we're going to start with Linda Chavez, who is so close to Duane, is going to share a little bit.
Good afternoon. Thank you for attending and acknowledging the shared loss of Duane Kraeger. I am Linda Barnhart Chavez, and I've known Duane for almost 40 years, since the 1980s when I lived in Texas. He was a close friend to our family, and we, Victoria and Chloe Chavez and myself, we called him Uncle. He was family to us. Reverend Carroll has talked a little bit about Duane's childhood. He was a great brother, a husband, uncle, and friend to many people. He was charismatic, courageous, friendly, resilient, and a survivor. He grew up and attended a one-room country school from grades 1 through 8 in Nebraska. She shared a little bit about his farm life. Now, there were just 6 people in the school, and 5 of them were Kraegers. So if you can imagine the things that went on. His siblings were Earl, who's passed away, and Berna, Russell, and Emily, which she's already mentioned. He attended high school in Winfred, Kansas. After graduating, he joined the Navy, which I did not know until recently when I talked with his sister, Emily. But he served as an electronic technician and with the Navy until 1952. After the Navy, he eventually left Kansas and moved to Oklahoma City. So he's quite the traveler. He attended and graduated from Central State University. That is where he met and married Linda Lee Thornsberry in 1966, the year I was born. They moved to Chicago and both worked for Western Electric, which is AT&T. They both worked for this company while attending graduate school at DePaul University in the 70s. Now, they eventually moved to Texas. Linda got her master's at North Texas State, which is University of North Texas now, while Duane traveled to Alaska. Many times he went back and forth to Alaska. He worked for the Trans-Alaska Pipelines out of Dallas, and he was the IT guy. And this is in the 1980s. In the 90s, Duane and Linda met my parents, Joe and Marion Barnhart, and they became lifelong friends. Linda continued her education at University of North Texas, and that's where my father was a professor. Not only did she get another master's, this time in English, she also became an author, a writer, an editor. She wrote 2 books with my father. Duane and Linda spent a lot of time with my daughters, Victoria and Chloe. I would sometimes drop them off on the weekend because I needed a break. They were always up for it, showed the girls a great time. I can remember when Duane helped Victoria when she was in 3rd grade with a science project. It won first place. I had no doubt that it wouldn't, because knowing how Duane was so good with hands-on things, building stuff. This project was really cool because this is before the internet, right? The project measured earthquake activity. And they took, he and Victoria took 2 bricks and had baby powder in between, hanging off of a suspension string. And then when there's any activity like an earthquake, any activity, it would go back and forth, and it measured. And I was just really impressed with the whole thing. And you know, I went and looked on the internet last night, and there's no such project or experiment out there to this day. So it was just a really cool original idea that I watched them create together. Duane had many talents. Duane loved theater, hosting or attending lavish dinner parties. In the 2000s, Duane and Linda took my girls to fancy parties at Linda's sister's home in Dallas. During the holidays especially. Chloe, my youngest daughter, loved dressing up just like the Kraegers did. I mean, they went all out when they dressed up. She would get her hair done like Shirley Temple. But we also went to the same church in Denton. It was called the Denton Unitarian Universalist Church for many years. When my parents retired in 2007, they moved back here to Tennessee, where they grew up, and the Kraegers decided to come also. So Duane and Linda had fallen in love with the mountains and the landscape. I can remember Duane saying that he won't ever miss the flatlands of Oklahoma or Texas ever again. So we all shared a big home in Knoxville. just a few neighborhoods over. They had always helped me raising my two daughters, and this wasn't any different. I will be forever grateful for his love and his energy that he gave Victoria and Chloe. When tragedy struck in 2008 while attending a play that Victoria was in, the Barnharts, Chavezes, and Kraegers were in attendance. A gunman came into the sanctuary and shot many people. Duane lost the love of his life that day. They were married 42 years. After my lengthy recovery from also being shot, who do you think drove me to my many doctor's appointments, surgeries, or even just to the store? Who do you think? Duane. Duane and I became very close after the shooting, of course. We had a lot to talk about. We talked about our pain, survivor's guilt, the death penalty, regret. Nothing was really off limits when he and I were together. Just a lot of grief and how to handle what we were going through. And we were able to say anything to each other and no judgment. I really enjoyed our conversations. It helped me get through the rough times. He was a very courageous person in my eyes. He chose to stay in Knoxville after Linda's passing. He loved this church and all the people in it. He managed to do more than just survive without Linda. He really lived. He got an apartment at Lanesboro across the street, then later on moved to Park Place in Knoxville, started an opera and bridge club. Then later he moved to Echo Ridge of Knoxville and continued his hobbies. He made lots of friends. He made friends everywhere he went. He also had a smile on his face. He gave me these great big bear hugs that sometimes hurt. And I would have to tell him, I can't breathe. And he'd let go and laugh. It was kind of a running joke with us. He loved me even though I did not like opera. Duane was a fine human being, and I can look back and feel very thankful that he was in my life. Duane, you will be missed. Thank you.
So Linda tells me that the family let her know that one of the songs Duane liked was Pete Seeger's Turn, Turn, Turn. I know many of you know it. So we're going to valiantly attempt to just sing one verse of it. Okay? So we're going to sing, the words will be up here for you. We're going to sing the chorus and the first verse and the chorus. And I'm going to invite you to, again, channel your inner Duane as you sing. Sing courageously and with a smile on your face.
To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven.
So Many of you shared a lot of times, good times, bad times, silly times, and serious times with Duane. We're going to take some time to just share stories. So I'm going to invite you to maybe take a minute and share your stories. And we're going to start with an old friend, new friend of Duane's. Don, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and explain how you knew Duane, and I'm going to bring the microphone down here for you. I'll bring it here. How about right here?
You want to stay seated?
You want to stay seated, Don? I can bring it right to you. I don't know. That's a retired preacher there. He's gonna want to come up.
She's going to bring the microphone to you.
Come up there.
Yeah, come on up here. You just get where you want to be, and I'll get the microphone ready for you.
When she said an old friend, that's an illustration of the truth. Old. The pictures that we had here before, the one that I really resonated with was the one that had him in high school out in Winfield, Kansas. I came to Knoxville 10 and a half months ago in retirement at Echo Ridge. There are a few Echo Ridge people here today. And you get acquainted with people from time to time. We sat at a meal one day, and Duane had been by many times, and we had talked for over the first couple months. But on this day, I was asking him about his origins in Nebraska. He said he was raised in a Lutheran congregation out there. He says, I even went to a Lutheran high school. Huh? Yeah. I says, no, there were no Lutheran high schools in western Nebraska. Well, he says, this was in Kansas. I said, Winfield, Kansas? He said, yes. Duane, St. John's Academy? Yes. You and I were in the same school 75 years ago. An incredible story of getting acquainted. But then we began to get into some more serious things, and I'm just going to touch on some things very, very briefly, and would hope someday we could enter into a little more conversation about some of the depths of conversation that he and I got into. First of all, in terms of religious traditions, he and I were born into a religious tradition that was a very closed tradition. Had carried the first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me, to you shall have no other religions before us. That was the Lutheran denomination we were part of. And I don't know for sure at what point he became liberated from that captivity, I'd call it. I suspect, and this is the first time I saw Gloria's picture, I suspect Gloria was the gift of the Holy Spirit that brought Duane to a new understanding of a relationship with God that transcended religion. But one of the things that Duane never forgot was the Lutheran liturgy. That seemed very important to him because it comes out of a European tradition, I suspect. It was his same spirit in the love of the music of the liturgy the same reason he loved opera. I mean, after all, opera is one of the liturgies of life. And Duane made connections with that. And we were just beginning recently to get into some deeper conversation about that liturgy that both of us grew up in. And that's where I just want to flag a couple of quick things. One is, I think it's clear when you look at your house of worship here, Unitarians have caught the spirit of what it means when God was saying to some people, I'm sick and tired of all your liturgies, all your religion. What I want is justice, compassion, humility. Duane had come to that spirituality in his life. And I just wanted to say how important this community was for him, because he talked about how different it was in a spirit that's open and accepting and welcoming. And I noticed on the window your LGBTQ. You don't find that kind of welcome in most churches. You're to be congratulated for being so positive and open about that. But the one thing I'd want to come back to very quickly is that if we grew up in a tradition that said no other religions beside ours. One of the things about liturgy that we have forgotten is that liturgy is basically a dialogue. Liturgy is not a monologue in which God comes and dumps on us, and certainly not when preachers get up and dump on people. Liturgy is about a conversation, and Duane and I were finally having an adult conversation that we never could have had in Winfield, Kansas. And if his sister Verna is watching on this today, Verna, I think you know what I'm talking about. But we were having it. And so in that context, I'd want to say that just in the news this weekend, we have a pretty high figure who is saying something similar about the U.S. We are the only important power in the world. And it's about time the rest of the world began to recognize it. Are we going to have a conversation about that? Are we going to let public officials get away with claiming USA, USA, USA? No. I think it means we open a conversation. And I would say, in Duane's memory, that I would hope I could enter into some more conversation with you about that. And just want to say very quickly, I had begun to get into some conversation about a no-no subject. You know, with the troubles we have in the Mideast, we don't deal with the fact that the ultimate problem was with the creation of the State of Israel. And we don't want to get into that conversation. The authorities of this country say, no, forget that kind of history. We don't want to deal with that. I think it's time we start having that conversation. And he had read with me a couple of books And I'm going to share those books with you and hope that you can help instigate a conversation in Duane's memory of one that we need to get into.
Absolutely. Thanks, Don. Thank you. Thanks, Don. I'm glad Duane was having passionate conversations in the last few months. It's good to know. Is there anybody else who would like to share a memory about Duane or a story? Maybe since we don't all know each other, maybe, maybe how about, TJ, you want to come up here or shall I bring you the microphone? I can, okay. Maybe just say your name and how you knew Duane so that we all know.
Hi, I'm TJ Blazing. We used to go to this church. We go to a different one now, but that's just because of our particular ministries, which I'll talk about briefly later. Duane was what I call an opera buddy. Now, you have to understand about the opera. There's two kinds of people that go to the opera. Those that go to see the opera, and those that go to be seen at the opera. And the poor people who put the operas together have to deal with both of them. And Duane and I both went to see the opera, and we had many a good conversation about operas and directors and producers, and we enjoyed that thoroughly. The other thing that I remember about Duane that you may not know about has to do with my other ministry, and that is to the homeless people of this community. Now that they've driven them all out from downtown, we don't have this campsites anymore, but when they did have those campsites, Duane and I would go down there together, and we'd visit the campsites and get to know the homeless people. And one day I went down there in my car, and I said, well, we don't need to lock the car, don't worry about it. And we went some distance from the car for about a half an hour, came back, and I said, Duane, let's see if that $100 I left is still here. And it was. They're not going to take it from my car. They knew my car. But he was a friend of the homeless and helped make them feel good about themselves and gave them some dignity. And we really enjoyed our time at the campsites sometimes, not necessarily all out under the bridge. We'd go to the campsites, meet the people, and sit at their campsites and talk with them. So that's just the kind of person Duane was.
Anybody else have a story? Shirley? Here you go.
I think that's too high for me.
Okay, hang on. All right. I was overestimating here. I was thinking of your spirit, not your body.
Oh,
yeah, your
thank you.
spiritual side.
Hi, I'm Shirley McGuire. My husband, Richard Lick, and I used to come to West Side every time the doors were opened, but now that we are much older and more frail, we don't get here nearly as much. However, when Duane and Linda and Joe and Mary Ann came to Knoxville and started coming to West Side, Richard and I were mentors for Duane and Linda, and we had them over to our home for lunch just a few days or weeks before the shooting. And it was tragic, so tragic for everyone. And Duane managed to get through it all, and he had a strong spirit that way. And I'm sure if there is a heaven, Duane's there.
Ellen? You and Shirley are probably about the same.
I am probably, yeah.
Yeah, you want to go a little bit? You and Shirley.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Right.
It's time for the short people to talk now. My name is Ellen Greenwood, and I'm a member here at Westside, and this is where I became acquainted with Duane and Linda, and especially Duane after Linda's death. And at that time, I was very heavily involved, sometimes the chairperson, sometimes Barry Shumpert was the chairperson of our Social Justice Committee at that time. And Duane was one of our most stalwart members and active workers on that committee, which falls right in with what you've just heard. He was involved as best he could in every activity we did. And just in the photos that you saw, there was one of him with us at Volunteer Ministry Center serving a lunch. There was one of him out, and this was after he'd gotten much older and less physically capable, but he was still out here on Grigsby Chapel helping us pick up trash. He helped with every project that he was able to. And there was one point, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I'm not sure how long ago, when there were several people in our congregation who were very actively involved in issues around immigration and what was happening with our undocumented immigrant neighbors. And we got involved with that also. And one day, a small group of us went downtown trying to see the Knox County Sheriff, but we never actually got to see him. But we tried to get the message over that at that time, Knox County was in the process of deciding, I can't remember the exact details, I could get it wrong, but under the 287G program, deciding if Knox County deputies would be ICE agents or not. And we were trying to make our voices known that we did not like that idea at all. Well, we felt sort of ineffective because we couldn't see the sheriff, and it just seemed like no one paid much attention, so we left. And it wasn't until a week or so later, after the county commission had met, that I was talking to Duane, and he said that, he got to thinking about the program and decided it needed to be thought of from, maybe we were going at it emotionally, and we needed to go at it from a more practical nature, and it just was not a financial benefit to Knox County to do that, so he prepared a speech and went to Knox County Commission and gave that speech. As we all know, it didn't really help, but he made his voice known for the people that he thought needed to be spoken for.
Yeah, we're going up for Chloe, up for Chloe, up for Chloe.
So my story is going to sound a little silly, like it's not going to sound as deep or anything, but now that I've grown up, like looking back at this story, it really shows each of us as a person. So when we lived in Texas and I'd get dropped off at their house, first of all, I loved being at their house. I could just go crazy. I could do anything I wanted, it felt like. And if you knew my grandparents, I definitely couldn't do that at their house. But they had two cats, so one really sweet cat and then one kind of mean cat. So I would walk in the house. Of course, I'm going to go for the nice cat first. This was his cat. His name was Shadow. It was a black cat, black, chunky, fluffy cat. This cat would always be sitting, it was like office, bedroom, office right here, always on top of this printer. This printer was warm. He was always in there. And I'd walk through the door and that's where I'd go first. I'd grab this cat and he would let me bully pretty much this cat for a couple of hours, and then you'd be like, okay, let's go outside or something, and then I'd go on to the mean cat. But I think thinking about like all of these stories this past couple of like days, I like, that sounds so silly, like silly goose of me to say this story, but that shows like him as a person. He let me be a kid. He let me do the things that I wanted to do, even if it affected his most precious animal. He let me just have fun. And then it would come to a time and he'd be like, okay, let's take a step back. And I think he really like taught me a lot as a kid for all these values that I now carry with me I didn't realize. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Thank y'all.
Anybody else? And Carol.
Another short one here.
There you go.
Thank you.
How's that? That's
good. I used to be a member of this church back in the 90s when it was a storefront, and this was a place where suited me, where I felt, comfortable. But anyway, so I didn't meet Duane till about 7 months ago. He and I were both residents at Echo Ridge, and I was so surprised how his age. I mean, he did not look his age. But anyway, so at Echo Ridge, I confirm this with the other couple people I see here. They're very territorial at meal times. You better get in early and get your seat, and don't try to get somebody else's seat. But anyway, so when I was first there, I sat down at the table. He came and sat down with me. The first thing he said was, do you like opera? Do you like opera? And I had to say, no. But he still accepted me. And then he said later, do you like bridge? And ironically, one of my goals when I moved to Echo Ridge was to learn to play bridge before I died there. Because I just think bridge is just such a sophisticated game, I play bridge. But so he was the inspiration behind the whole bridge program at Echo Ridge, and he made it a point to call everybody, make sure we got together on so many days a week, and made copies out of bridge books, and taught us and patiently went over things and laughed, and so we're coming along, and we miss him. When we're sitting there at the table, we just miss him, and I'm just so thankful for him.
Anybody else? Judy?
I had a feeling we weren't going to get through this without Judy. I had a feeling.
So I'm Judy Winchester. I've known Duane as long as he lived in Knoxville and came to this church. But listening to other people talk, I was reminded of something which I go, ha-ha, laugh now, but it didn't seem so funny at the time, and David's going to remember this. And I can remember it was last summer or the summer before that, but it was certainly, Duane was 93. So we're talking about a guy who was, maybe he was 92 or 91 or something like that at the time. And so we had a call for one of our work days here when they wanted everybody to come and work on the grounds outside. So Duane wanted to come and help out with the church because they wanted everybody to come and help. So I'm thinking to myself, boy, I don't really know what he can do, but I came up with a plan. There's a little ridge out, a little wall out here, and there's a lot of plants that grow between the wall and the building and that wall, and the wall's like so high. And there were a lot of dead flowers there that had bloomed earlier, and now they were gone. So I set Duane up there where he could lean right on this little ledge and with clippers and cut off all those dead flowers. And I thought, now this is safe. He can do this, Well, I don't remember how, but now he ended up on top of the wall up here where the plants are. But then, I also brought a folding chair for him to head with him down there so that if he was tired, he could just sit down and rest and then get up again and so forth. Well, he wanted the folding chair up here so he could sit down and rest up there. So somehow somebody put the chair up there for him. I'm sure it wasn't little me. And so he sits down there to rest, and the chair collapsed, and he went straight backwards on his back in the chair. Well, now, fortunately, he wasn't hurt at all, but it took a few minutes to find that out. But anyway, like I say, I can laugh now, but it seemed pretty dramatic at the time. But I just bring it up because it shows how he wanted to take part of it in everything. He wanted to help with everything, even when he really wasn't able to, and just get in there and be part of things. And that's a perfect example.
So I'm going to share one more story that I've been remembering as you all have been talking. And Judy, you may not know this story, but it happened in the same location, up here on the wall, along near the entrance of the building. Some of you will remember many years ago, we were having some water lines replaced, and there were some water line breakages that happened. And I probably only been here a couple years. So Duane was probably 83 at that time, maybe 85, right? And I came into church one day, and many of you also know Jonas Holdeman, who's also about Duane's age, right? I came in, and the do-it-yourselfers, we can handle it, we've got this, these two 80-something men, there they were out shirtless in 95-degree weather, digging those lines themselves. They were like, we'll find it, we'll fix it ourselves. And I was like, holy moly, this is not a good thing. And some of you will remember Terry Tyler was here at that time. He said, Carol, you need to issue a cease and desist order right now. And I was like, what am I going to say to them? But there they were, Duane and Jonas, out there with their shovels. It was 90 degrees, and there they were digging. They were going to do it themselves. And I will never forget the determination, the strength, but the cheerfulness. Neither of them Duane was not complaining about the heat. He was just as happy as could be out there. So I want to close the part of our service that we're doing inside today by sharing some words from Duane's sister, Verna. Verna sent an email to me a couple of days ago, and she shared just how much Westside meant to Duane and how much, particularly, the presence of Westsiders visiting him in that last couple of weeks mattered. This is what Verna said about Duane. As I pause to reflect upon the life and legacy of my dear brother Duane, I thank God for the blessing to have called him my brother. He was only 14 months older. I will forever cherish our love and how precious our time together was. Duane's sense of humor was one of his many gifts to us all, and he had a special way of making us all laugh and smile. It was infectious. He had a laugh that could lift everyone's spirits. We often laughed until our sides hurt, creating memories we will all always cherish. Thank you, Duane, for the laughter, the shenanigans, and the endless love. We'll miss your jokes, your warm hugs, and that mischievous twinkle in your eye. Our many conversations always included sharing his love of and joy in, yes, the two things, opera and bridge. Somehow, she says, I could never truly relate, but he always made it sound interesting and fun. Thank you, Duane, for the laughter, the lessons, the endless love. As we say goodbye, let's honor Duane's memory by living life to the fullest, just as he did. So I invite us to do that. Honor his memory by living life to the fullest, by sharing easy laughter and ready smiles, giving hugs that are just a little bit too tight, always meeting life, even in the face of great difficulty and challenge, with a spirit of optimism and hope, with possibility for the good.
So what I'm going to invite you to do with me, for those of you who feel so inclined, a couple of things are going to happen now. So we are actually going to inter Duane's ashes in our memorial garden right now. So for those of you who feel like coming outside to do that, we will go outside and do that and say a few words out there. And if you don't want to go out in the heat and you just want to remain here, that is totally fine. We're going to have some refreshments. And there's also a card on the back table at the back of the sanctuary that we're going to send to Duane's family. So if you would like to write a note on the card to the family, please feel free to do that. But for those who are interested in coming outside, we're going to just take a few minutes outside to inter his ashes.